But I'm delighted to say that we're going to get into the panel sessions now, and we've got our first presenter, who's Daniel. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Good, Phil. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, well, Daniel, it's great to have you here. And of course, you're entering this investor conference with $60 million in your back pocket. So congratulations on the recent fundraise.
Thank you. It feels much better on the other side than trying to fight my way in and get it. But yeah, I'm enjoying my brief moment of agency.
That's wonderful. Well, talking of agency, I'll hand the keys over to you and let you take it from here, Daniel.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining me. So, within the time available, which is until 1 p.m., I'd just like to take you through three important points. The first is there are genes in the cell that can reverse age and rescue disease, but they're incredibly dangerous in their current form. The second thing is that there are now cell simulations available where you can run centuries of experiments in less than a year, and that gives you a lot more experimental power than you had until recently. And the last thing is that we're actually using this type of approach and finding new things that actually work in the real world. So it all comes together, and I can sort of go into each of those points in detail right now. So to begin with, what are these genes that can reverse cell age and rescue disease? So they're called the Yamanaka factors, originally discovered for another reason, which is a Japanese scientist called Shinya Yamanaka was trying to find a way to make an adult cell into a stem cell. Later on, it was shown that this same approach can actually reverse the age of the cell in the process. So this graph, I won't go into the detail, but the blue line is a robust measure of biological age called the epigenetic clock. And using the Yamanaka factors, you can reduce a cell from an age of 62 to an age of 0 in about 3 weeks. And yeah, this is sort of incredibly exciting. There was one point where it wasn't known if you could slow aging or stop aging, let alone reverse aging to 0. So this was exciting, but these Yamanaka factors are dangerous. They can induce tumors if you don't control their expression in vivo. So clearly something exciting, but also something dangerous. Secondly, these same factors can rescue disease in mouse models. So, in a mouse model of Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome, which is a genetic um, mutation which causes accelerated aging, you can express Yamanaka factors. So, even though the mutation is still in place, Yamanaka factors overwhelm whatever the problem is in the cell and actually rescue phenotypes in this mouse and extend lifespan. So, you can see the difference between the red line and the blue line on the right-hand side, which is in the presence of the factors, the blue line, in the absence of the factors, the red line. And these mice in the middle, which are expressing factors, are looking a little bit better than the mice to the left. So you have these genes, they can reverse age, and they can also rescue disease. It almost sounds too good to be true, and it is too good to be true. There's this dangerous side effect, which is basically cancer inducing. But wouldn't it be nice if there was a version of this that was safe? You know, it's almost like the magic medicine. You could go into a older cell, or you could go into an older and diseased cell, and you could bring that cell back to sort of youthful, healthy functioning. So we believe we are within reach of a gene or set of genes that's capable of doing this. And the way we're going to get there, and the way we have been getting there, is something called cell simulations. So you can go into the black box of the cell with some of these powerful machine learning models, like the same models used in ChatGPT, and learn what's going on between genes and put that in the computer. And basically, you now have a virtual cell, and you can do hundreds of millions, if not billions, of experiments. So in a pilot experiment, we tested 350,000 different combinations of two transcription factors. And what you can see on the right is the change in the age of the simulation as we do all of those different experiments. So you can see most experiments age the cells by 2.5 years. But you also see in the green box, there's some experiments that reverse the age of the cell, and there's some experiments that really age the cell a lot more than we would expect. And what we do is we take those really exciting results from the simulation, we take them into the real world, and it works. We didn't expect this to work so early, but it does work. So what I'm showing you here is a new combination of genes. We're going to call it C0. And on the left is the change in epigenetic age, which is this robust biomarker of age. So C0 rejuvenating the cells by the same amount as Yamanaka factors. But crucially, on the right-hand side, when we do a colony formation assay, which is basically testing for this cancer causing problem, you see the Yamanaka factors inducing a colony, a subset of the Yamanaka factors, which are reported to be safe, also inducing a colony, and this new combination of genes not inducing a colony. So this is very exciting to see genes that are capable of the rejuvenation, but not with this terrible side effect. Even more recently, we've shown that we can recapitulate this with just a single gene. So we call this gene S1. We're able to reverse epigenetic age by 5 years over a 1 month exposure, so quite a long exposure for this particular gene, and we're not inducing colonies with this single gene. So a single gene is much more tractable from a drug development perspective. So we're very excited that there is even a single gene that's capable of this. So we'll see, how far that gets in validation. And this is the validation we're going through at the moment. We're testing things in fibroblasts to begin with. That's just the best system for doing lots of experiments. Later this year, we'll know if this works in multiple cell types. We'll also know if this works in a functional setting. So, can we take a fibroblast and show that functionally it's younger, not just using a biomarker? So we're looking at cell type specific assays like wound healing for fibroblasts, also cell type independent functional assays, which is basically the hallmarks of aging, like mitochondrial function and senescence and things like that. Importantly, we're also taking a baby step towards the world of therapeutics, which is running a fibrosis assay. So this is a disease-specific assay. We want to test whether something that's much safer can also rescue disease the way the Yamanaka factors can reduce disease. So we'll also have a readout, I think, by the end of Q1 next year on whether this can work in an in vitro disease setting. And then, there's lots of competition in the field that we work in. So, what's keeping us alive? What's our sort of existential technology? And it's really the AI tools that we've developed. So we developed something called a cell aging clock, which allows us to be confident that a cell's got older or younger. This took about a year and about £1.5 million to build a data set. And that clock can be used in simulation. So without this clock, you can't be confident you found something rejuvenative. We know many of our competitors tried and failed to create such a technology. And using this clock, we've been able to find 6 new ways to rejuvenate a cell that aren't as dangerous. And we have a sort of IP that's very strong around the gene therapies linked to those genes. So we don't know, there might be 200 of these genes out there, but right now the priority is to develop like an IP stronghold. And then we'll be in a good position to sort of build on top of that, but without a freedom to operate problem. We have the best in the world for cell simulations. Bo Wang was the author of the manuscript SCGPT, so using the same type of machine learning model to learn what's going on between genes and having a cell simulation as a byproduct. Brendan was the first to discover a single cell aging clock that was accurate. Lucas is the author of the most accurate aging clock. So I think in terms of the tools we need to complete the task, we have the best in the world. And what are we doing now with the money we've just closed? So basically, we're trying to fully de-risk the later drug development by finding out what all of these genes are, what's the modality that we can use to access those genes. So far, we've shown this simulation-based approach works. Next stage is to show that we can do this in vivo and rescue disease. We want to make sure we've got a IP stronghold and monopoly because we can leverage that later. And the reason I'm sort of giving the talk today is that already, like immediately after the fundraise, we've identified additional milestones that will give us, another level of value inflection. So we'd like to show that we can take an intervention and actually rescue multiple diseases across different mouse models, because that almost proves out that we've got something that could really go in multiple directions. And we want to map the risk landscape of age-linked indications, because if you attain this technical goal, which is cell type agnostic, disease agnostic, you've now got the luxury of choosing between all of the different age-linked diseases that are out there, and you can choose the lower risk path forward, if you have this technical goal attained. So it's a big exercise we need to do, mostly research based, but basically map the risk landscape of all those age-linked indications, like what's the best model system, etc. So that's all I wanted to say today. If you want to contact me, dan@shiftbioscience.com. Please don't give my email address out to recruiters. I've got enough of those. in my spam box. But otherwise, thanks for listening.
Well, Daniel, great presentation. Thank you. And a couple of questions, one from me and then one from our audience. Of course, you'll be very familiar with all of the arguments, positive arguments about validation of aging biomarkers in the space. And obviously, you've created your own. So, is that a question you got from investors to sort of say, well, your results are great because they're using your system. How valid is your clock in the outside world? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, so there's an inherent conflict of interest in creating a measure that supports whatever goal you're seeking. So we have a single cell clock not to prove to the world that we found something, but to prove to ourselves that we found something.
Yeah.
Subsequently, you have to show that you work with a gold standard measure. You basically, you rejuvenate according to somebody's favorite measure that they're interested in. So slowly but surely, we're sort of going forwards, gold standards, functional assays, in vivo, disease models, just making this real for as many people as possible and what's real to them. So that a lot of that lies ahead of us, but getting an epigenetic clock to rejuvenate was something I've been trying to do for a long time. I ended up having to pivot the company to move away from an old hypothesis that wasn't sufficient. So getting to that milestone is a big deal internally, but ultimately we need to prove this out in functional assays and multiple cell types, and importantly in disease models.
Yeah, very exciting. And of course, your patent portfolio is going to be a big part of that as well, right?
Say that again, Phil. I missed that.
Your patent portfolio from those results is going to be a very big part of building moats around what you're doing as a business.
Correct. So, as it stands, you can only make claims around the cell types that you've got data for. We're going to be trying to do multiple cell types, and there'll be cell type linked diseases. But if we can show a diversity of cell types, we can actually make quite a powerful claim across age-linked disease. So that's a priority from an IP perspective to show multiple cell types to make that type of claim.
Yeah, very, very exciting. So, I've got a question from Anna Baroni. She says, how do you envisage the treatment with this gene? Are you considering EVV or LNP? And do you have any ideas about the regimen and the costs for patients, which, of course, is probably a way out from where you are at the moment, but interesting question.
Yeah, modality is very big question. So we're working with transcription factors, which are the least druggable part of the cell, which is almost sadistic working on that if you're trying to develop a therapy. We're going to make the simulations as good as possible through these sort of iterative wet lab, dry lab loops. And we're going to then branch out to the druggable universe, which is the whole genome, simulate all combinations of two genes. And ideally, you find two kinases you can inhibit, but we don't know what the biology is going to allow. So we need to, it's really biology led at this stage. The fastest way to find out is just to complete the exploration.
Yeah, well, exciting times, Daniel. We love watching your journey, so looking forward to the next round of news coming out from you guys. And thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for listening.
Great. Thank you.